Hello and welcome to this edition of the Farrell Phelps Show. We've been on hiatus for a small period of time, but I guess today is Pastor Deckard. Welcome to the show, Pastor.
I'm glad to be here.
Yes. Now, you and I have had conversations about violence and gun violence and the things that are happening in the community, which you're very involved in. And just recently we had this horrendous murder that happened in a church in South Carolina. How do you think that's impacted America?
Wow, it's impacted America in several aspects and several dimensions. It's once again reopened the race situation in America. The question is, have we gained ground or are we going backwards? It also, politicians have a tendency of following hot topics. So of course now, it's been a political season, politicians are now referring back to the gun laws. But the reality of it is, laws don't change the heart of a man. No matter what laws are in place, when someone decides to do something evil, it's the evil heart that will condition their actions and not the laws of the land. So I agree that the laws of the land should be kind of amended in gun control, but at the same time, the reality of it is criminals don't follow the law in the first place.
That's how they get the name, right?
Exactly.
You know, one of the things that has really bothered me in this whole situation, especially when I watched the arrest of the young man, I don't even want to call his name. I don't even think he deserves that. But when I watched the arrest of him, he was so protected and so guarded. I couldn't believe it. I was like, you guys are protecting him like he's an angel, or that he's something that's worth something, and to me he's not worth anything. Somebody that can walk into a congregation, literally sit through their Bible study, and then murder the people that are there. And I was reading some information earlier on this particular subject, where he actually went over to the people that were in the congregation and said to them, "Now, this is something that you can talk about now." You know, I mean, for him to go over to them and say that and make that type of remark, it was unbelievable. And what's even more unbelievable is that we've allowed the Confederate flag to still stay in that city. That should have been taken down a long time ago. And to me, it's when these types of things happen that other actions need to take place. It should have happened a long time ago. But now something has happened to trigger this whole movement of taking the Confederate flag down. And what it represented was horrible for the people. But we allowed it to stay forever. I do feel like this, that things happen for a reason. Everything that happens, there's a reason for it to happen. And I think there's a domino effect oftentimes. And a lot of times I think that God allows these things to happen so that change can take place. The necessary change can take place. Do you agree?
Well, definitely. God is always in control. No matter what the situation is, God is always in control. It's very difficult sometimes to communicate with people. How can a God be in control when you have innocent lives being shed? Natural disasters, hurricanes, tsunamis, and how can God be in control when things are so out of control? Well, even in chaos, God is still in control over the cosmos, which is the world we live in. Now, I'm going to go back just for a second to some of your remarks. Mm-hmm. I will refer to him by name. His name is Dalen Ruff. And the reason I'm going to refer to him by name is because, believe it or not, he's someone's child. And because he's someone's child, he was created by God. Therefore, he does have some type of redemptive spirit. And I was amazed at this. After this horrible event, the families of those in South Carolina immediately said, "We forgive you." So if they can forgive him, that's demonstrating something to America. And again, I'm not going to make this a racial issue right now, but eventually it will probably evolve into a racial issue because that's the reality of what we're dealing in. But what it showed America is that once again, the black soul is very forgiving. We have been able to forgive people. We were brought to this country in slave ships. We were sold on slave markets. We were abused and misused. Yet we have the spirit of forgiving those who have oppressed us, abused us, and enslaved us because we understand that God is still in control. So this young man, understand something, 21 years old, to have that much hatred in your heart, that was not something he woke up with overnight. That was something that was instilled and groomed and nurtured in him from some misguided adult. So now, the reason he was handled like that under arrest, that's protocol. That's proper protocol. Everybody who gets arrested, watch this, I'm going to get, everybody who gets arrested, that's proper protocol. Unfortunately, what we see on the news and the headlines is that African American young men don't have a chance to get arrested. We are assassinated before we get arrested. So you've never seen an African American child or African American man in that type of protocol, even the audacity of stopping at Burger King on the way to jail. You've never seen that with an African American. When you see us, it's a white sheet. We're covered with white sheets because we don't have a chance for a fair trial. We're executed and tried on the streets because they say we are a threat to their lives. So again, I'm torn. My initial response was like you with anger when I saw this young kid smiling and happy and everyone guarded him like he was an angel.
Right.
But the reality of it is, he's a human being. And if I declare to demonize him and devalue him as a human being, the message I'm giving to America is it's okay when they do it to me. So I want to cancel all aspects of evil and hatred. If the family forgive him, I got to learn from this and easily forgive those who mistreat me. But at the same time, be proactive, learn from this experience, and get involved in the process of healing in America. America needs to be healed.
And you know what? I totally agree that America certainly does need to be healed. And I think a lot of times in the African American community, I agree with you, we are quick to forgive. And I'm just going to be honest with you guys, it's not always easy for me to forgive that quickly. It takes me a minute sometimes. I can fake it and act like, oh yeah, you know, no. But for me, it's not that easy for me to forgive. And I've seen so many social injustices done to the African American people that it really ticks me off when I continue to see the same thing happen repetitively. And so where you are, I'm not there yet. Well, so I do understand you, you know, and I certainly understand it coming from a pastoral perspective. And I do know the power of forgiveness. It just takes me a minute sometimes to get to that place of forgiveness. But I do know that that's what we all need to do is forgive.
Well, you've been following me and witnessing my journey long enough that you know that whenever there's a injustice in our community, I'm at the forefront.
Right.
I've led protest rallies. I've led anti-police rallies. I'm very active in making sure justice takes place. But at the same time, while I'm marching and protesting, I have to be forgiving, but I don't forget.
Yeah.
So there's a difference. See, I can forgive, but I don't forget, because if I forget, I won't learn anything from it. So I forgive, but I remember so I can make sure that those who are following after me will have a better situation than I have. So I forgive you, but I won't forget it because I'm going to learn from the experience so I can prevent someone else from experiencing the same thing you just experienced. So we have to be wise enough, because see, when you don't forgive, you now capture yourself. Because when you don't forgive, now you'll feel with bitterness and hatred and animosity, and you cannot operate at your maximum capacity with any negative energy. So I remove the negative energy, I forgive you, but I learn from everything. So I learn from it so I can make this place a better place that I live in. So don't forget. I got to forgive you. Don't forget it.
Right. Yeah. And I understand that. I totally understand that. You know, I knew this was going to be some great dialogue today. And it's something that needs to be talked about. And until things are talked about, they can't be helped.
Yes.
Oftentimes we have to talk about these things in order for healing to take place. And that's why I wanted this conversation and dialogue to take place with us today, because I know it would make a difference, and especially when the world gets to see it.
Excellent,
you know,
excellent.
I'm having a wonderful time having this dialogue with you. I know people are being blessed by it. And we're going to be back in just a moment with more of the Carol Phelps Show. You guys stick around. We'll be back.
Sky Trues Custom Eyewear has taken the world by storm. In only 8 months, Sky Trues has gained the eyes of many, including celebs like Big Sean, Little Flip, Destiny Child, Soulja Boy, just to name a few. Through custom design, Sky Trues can put your imagination on your frames. I bring to you the next big thing in Houston, Sky Trues, created by Golden Boy, the musician, the artist, the entrepreneur, and grassroots marketing genius. Be inspired. Sky Trues, custom designed frames. Sky Trues.
Hello and welcome back to the Carol Phelps Show. My guest today is Pastor Deckard. I want to make sure I mentioned your church. That's Greenhouse
International Church.
International Church.
Yes.
Yes. Now I noticed a lot of your focus is on youth, also.
But it's also totality of the family, but we spend a lot of energy developing the youth of this generation. But because this is my reality. I'm an African American man, and 60 to 65% of African American children wake up in a home without their father. Therefore, if the father is the original voice of the family, when we talked about earlier, God's control, God also has an order, a system. And God's system in this world was to give us fathers that will speak into our life, to give us direction, insight, coaching of what we should become, who we should become, and who we are. You remove the father from the family, you remove the voice of reasoning, the voice of coaching, the voice of empowering. So we have decided at the Greenhouse International Church to become not just a church in the four walls, but become fathers to a fatherless community. So we spend a lot of time with the youth, giving them directions, insight to reach their full potential. If your natural daddy may not be there, there will be a mechanism in place in our church to help you reach your full potential.
And you know what? When you talk about fathers and you talk about the family, I think a lot of times we have social injustices and social issues that come up because we don't take care of the foundation, which is the family. And a lot of times we are missing those dads out of those homes, and we do have those misguided children. And you know, it makes me wonder what kind of family environment and what kind of dad the young man had who went into that church and murdered 9 innocent people.
Well, I've only heard this kid, like everyone else, for a couple of weeks. So I did a few research on his family. His family is very apologetic about what happened. But at the same time, this kid had a Confederate flag on his license plates. He had social media postings of him with all kind of anti-black this and anti-black that. So his family had to have known the spirit in which dwelled inside of him, and no one challenged that. So I'll put it this way: if I know you're doing something wrong, and I may not participate in what you're doing wrong, but I never say, Pharaoh, that's wrong. I am giving you free license to continue to do what you're doing. No one in his family, no one in his inner circle went to him and said, this is wrong. Let's get some help. Let's figure this out. So his family may not have given him the gun, nor pulled the trigger, but they had an influence on him. And not only his family, his immediate family, but this kid had began to, his memoirs say that after Trayvon Martin, he made his mind up. This kid, at this time, he's 21, but so he had to have been 15, 16 years old at this time. After the Trayvon Martin deal, he said in his mind that black men need to be taken off the place of America. He decided to participate in a race war. He made his mind up at 15 and 16 years old that the black man is my enemy, and I'm going to grow up one day and take them out. No one challenged that thought, that mythology. So his whole environment was dysfunctional.
And that was one of the things that he said when he went into the church in South Carolina, was that he wanted to take them out because they raped and killed his people.
But you know, that saying, that thing, that's what all white supremacists use when they're battling against black people. You know, the Tulsa riots back in 1921 was formed of that same mythology. You know, Emmett Till was murdered because of that same mythology, that a white man feared the black man's presence so much, endangering the white woman, that they can take our lives. So that is a myth that the supremacists have used throughout time to give them the freedom of heart to destroy us.
And which was basically his template for doing what he did. You know, we talk about the issues that are going on. I want to also talk about solutions and how we might help our world to get better and how we can help this world to change based on what we see.
You didn't give me any questions in advance, but this is always the answer. One problem with America is we're so divided. Even in our faith, we're divided. What breaks my heart every week is that I have a growing congregation, but people often label me as a black church. That breaks my heart.
Okay.
I don't want to be a black church. I want to be a church. I don't want to drive down the neighborhood and see a white church or a Hispanic church. I want us to be the church, where our focus is love, because God is love. So at the foundation, if I love myself and I love my God, then you and I now become brothers. It will be very difficult for me to sit in Bible study with you for a whole hour and then kill my brother. Because he did not see them as being his brothers and sisters, even though he sat in there with an hour with them. He even said he liked them a little bit. He said, I almost changed my mind because they were so nice and kind. But because he did not identify them as being his brothers, but he identified them as being something less than him or something different than him, he was able to pull the trigger. So at the end of the day, if we would learn how to let our differences not be so big, but let love bring us together. Dr. King said it easily. Love is the only force that can turn an enemy into a friend. We got to go back to loving.
You know, when we talk about going back to loving one another as a part of our solution, how do we get to that place where we can learn to love one another? Because we can say it, but are we really feeling it in our heart? How do we get to that place where we can truly say that and mean that?
Communication, engagement, and being proactive. I'll give you an example. After these shootings, I reached out to another congregation who, quote unquote, is led by a Caucasian pastor.
Okay.
And I said, brother, you know what would do our community good? For you to come and preach in my pulpit, and I come preach in your pulpit, and we embrace one another in front of our people.
Yeah.
And he said, brother, that's a great idea. Step by step, doing things like that to make a difference.
Right.
If every now and then on our jobs we would find someone that does not look like us and invite them to lunch, have dialogue, conversation. You know, this is a reality for some Caucasians. The only time they see a black face is on reality TV.
Oh, Lord.
The sports arena. When someone gets in trouble. Mass media does not show a lot of great black moments. When they portray us, it's always in a negative light. When we're acting a fool.
Right.
You know, I'm always on scenes where the media is involved. You know what amazes me? It's like a magnet. Whenever there's a fire in the community or a crime in the community and the media shows up, they always pick the person that looks the least educated.
Absolutely. That's very true.
The female with the roller still in her hair. The brother with the pants hanging halfway down.
Right.
When there's another guy standing right there.
Look like he got
With
good
starch
sense.
jeans and a polo on. Another lady standing there who's well developed and very articulate. They refuse to interview them.
Right.
They're going to interview the person who's going to make the story more sensational. We got to change the narrative.
Absolutely.
We got to let America know that
I certainly agree with that, and often I certainly mirror your what you just said, which is funny as heck to me. I'm trying my best not to laugh, but yeah, oftentimes in the media they will portray us in that way. The most negative person on the scene is the one that they're going to put that mic in their face and ask them to say something, and they can hardly get their words together to even formulate a sentence to say. And unfortunately, that's the world we live in. But I think it's important for us as a people to see these things and recognize them and make sure that we get away from them, if that makes any sense. And oftentimes we can get away from this type of thing simply by education. Education is everything. Simply by education, we can get away from these types of things. You know, I'm enjoying this dialogue, as I always do with you, Pastor, needless to say. And we're going to be back in just a moment with more of the Farrell Phelps Show. You guys stick around. Welcome back to this edition of the Farrell Phelps Show, where my guest today is Pastor Deckard from Greenhouse International Ministry. Church. You know, and that's what this is all about, the church. That's what we're talking about, the church and the things that have happened in the church. Now, I know we had a couple of questions from our audience guests. I wanted to start with you. That was a comment that you made a minute ago when we were off camera.
My comment was simply, since the shooting, our church has gotten together. We even held an emergency meeting before I left town to start like discuss an exit strategy or an action plan, if you will, in case something may happen, God forbid. But we have to be prepared. And what we came up with was, you know, as far as people will be by the doors, walkie-talkies to communicate with one another,
right.
Code words, things of that nature. My question to you, my comment is, that's what we've had to do since this tragedy. And it is unfortunate that people would come in a church and want to kill people. You know, a church is a place of redemption. It's a place of hope.
Sanctuary, yeah.
It's a sanctuary. It's sacred. And this young man simply, he came in and desecrated the sanctuary. So my question or comment to you, Pastor, is do you think churches should have an action plan or an escape or an evacuation plan in such instances? I mean, it's coming to that. There are churches even talking about getting metal detectors, which is really kind of crazy to me. But seeing the world that we live in, we're going backwards as far as racial equality. White people don't see us the same as we, you know, as far as unity. You were talking about unity earlier and how, you know, you wanted the pastor to come to your church and I'll come to church and we'll preach. But there's a lot of narrow-mindedness when it comes to the races. But as far as the action plan, that's what we've done. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, as far as the action plan, again, and I don't take lightly. First, also, let me just pause and say to those people who were executed in South Carolina, our prayers and condolences go out to their family and that community. Pastor Pinkerton was actually a state senator, also a very wise man.
Yes, he was.
But an action plan realistically should be in place everywhere at all times.
Yes.
You should have an action plan for your home.
Yes.
You should have one for your church home, for your place of business. Everywhere you go, there should be a plan of action because you never know what's going to happen. And not just a natural disaster, not just a hurricane or a storm. You got to have an action plan for the devil. Because the devil is busy. He's seeking whom he can devour. So we have to put... And interestingly enough, I don't know, maybe it's just my insurance policy, but at the church, the insurance policy we have, they kind of guideline some situations, some plans, make sure we had certain plans in place. And even within my own personal ministry, my security team makes sure certain steps are in place that my life won't be put in harm's way because we were very active in the community. So we have to be wise and put things in place. And let me also say this. In America, the black church has always been a target. In America, the black church has always been a place where people felt free to come in and destroy us because they knew we felt so sacred in the black church. They knew we felt so protected in the black church that we would put our, per se, guards down. So history in America shows the black church has always been an endangered species.
Yes.
Lots of church burnings,
Yes.
and especially in the South.
The South, whenever the Ku Klux Klan wanted to make a statement, they would go to the nearest black church,
Right.
put a cross, and set it on fire.
Yes.
They didn't have the sacredism that we have for our churches.
And you know what, too? We as a people, when we talk about the African American culture, and you were saying a minute ago how we were very forgiving.
Yes.
We are very much forgiving, but we're also very trusting too. And I think when that man came to that congregation, they probably trusted that this young man needed some help, or that he was seeking some type of counsel. I bet you that that's what they thought in their minds. You know, and when I read the story and did the research on it, he talked about this young man actually asked that pastor to come and sit next to him.
Mm-hmm.
Can you come and sit by me?
And you got,
I mean, you know, and again, we're trusting people. And a lot of times when we trust, we can put ourselves in jeopardy. Although I do agree that we should have, these types of things happening certainly enlighten us to what we need to do and the boundaries that we need to set. And of course, we don't ever want people to feel unwelcome by bringing them into the church and then giving them the wand and making sure they have no metal on them when we're bringing them in. But it seems like we're moving in that direction. It really does. And it's unfortunate. Very unfortunate.
when I first heard about this, because, Senator Pinkett was in session. He traveled a great distance to go from session back to Bible study. He told the state senate, I got to go back home for a very important meeting. You know, I saw the number, that was maybe 13 people at Bible study. I'm like,
Right.
well, wow, he traveled 4 hours back and forth to go to Bible study for 13 people. Lets me know he was a very compassionate and a very dedicated man.
Committed, yeah.
But then I realized it wasn't a normal Bible study. It was a Bible study with the leaders. So it was a Bible study that even the members of that church were not involved in. It was just the leadership, the core leadership team. And he was so kind that he allowed a perfect stranger to sit in a leadership Bible study with him because his heart was for the people. Now Satan had a different agenda, a different plan. Every now and then, we have to put our lives on the line for what we believe in. And if we really say we believe in God, we have to be open enough to receive everybody.
That's right.
Yes, we have systems and plans in place, but I don't ever want to get to the point where we're looking, because we've experienced just in America as a black man enough, where you go in an elevator, and I'm not bragging, but normally when you see me, I'm gonna be well dressed, we're very well polished.
Always. He's always on fleek, as they call it.
Listen, I had this experience once. I was in the elevator in the Galleria. What I had on was pretty nice. I got in the elevator. There were some Caucasian people and myself. The next floor, most of them got off. It was me and one Caucasian lady left. She cleans her purse. I looked, I said, ma'am, that's funny. Because what you have in your purse, my shoes probably cost 10 times more. I said, you know, I don't know where you were educated, but I'm sure that if we have an intellectual conversation, I can impress you with my dialogue. I said, you have a great day. And she looked. I just wanted to make her aware, and I was aware of the fact that she was afraid of me just because of my presence and the color of my skin, not knowing the quality and the depth of my character. So as black men, everywhere we go, I don't care if you got on a hoodie, on a money suit, you're going to be looked at up and down, sometimes rejected, and often inspected. So I don't want the church to be a place where we reject people and expect people because of what they look like. Let's go for the heart and the soul.
Yeah. And I think going for the heart and the soul is certainly important. And unfortunately, the world we live in, we do judge based on what we see. And it's so sad and so unfortunate. And a lot of times, like what you were just saying when you get on the elevator, a lot of times for me, I don't dress like you. I mean, you know, you always, like we said, on fleek. That ain't me. You know, I throw some jeans on, t-shirt, ain't no telling what I'm gonna look like, you know, and whatever. But I know how to do it when I'm ready to do it, if that makes any sense. But it's so funny because I've noticed with myself when I go in certain environments how people will treat me based on how I'm dressed. They know absolutely nothing about me. And then when they do know a little bit more about me, then they change. And it's really funny because I've seen it so many times. And I actually laugh inside.
It shouldn't have to be that way.
And it shouldn't, and that's my point. It shouldn't have to be that way. But again, that's the world we live in. You know, we're going to be back with more of this wonderful dialogue. You guys stick around. We're going to be back in just a moment.
Sky Trues Custom Eyewear has taken the world by storm. In only 8 months, Sky Trues has gained the eyes of many, including celebs like Big Sean, Little Flip, Destiny Child, Soulja Boy, just to name a few. Through custom design, Sky Trues can put your imagination on your frames. I bring to you the next big thing in Houston, Sky Trues, created by Golden Boy, the musician, the artist, the entrepreneur, and grassroots marketing genius. Be inspired. Sky Trues, custom designed frames. Sky Trues!
Deckard of Greenhouse International Church. I knew I was going to get it out some kind of way. I said Greenhouse International Church. We're talking about what happened in South Carolina, you know, and my heart certainly goes out to Clementa Pickney, the pastor that was killed at that church. It was a terrible situation, but it's also been an opportunity for light to be shed on racial injustices here in America and for change to be actually take place in our great country. I want to ask. I want to give an opportunity to one of our guests to ask the question. Tony, you had a question for us.
Yeah, good. My question was, what do you tell the saints or your congregation about coming to church when they're afraid to come because they don't feel safe no more? And this is supposed to be a hospital and a second home, but they're afraid to go in now. And what do you tell them?
Tell them exactly what the Word of God says. God did not give us a spirit of fear, So we can't operate in a spirit of fear. We got to operate in the spirit of love and power and authority. But we also have to be wise enough to have things in place to make our congregation feel safe at church. The same way when you go to the mall, there's security. The same way when you go to the physical hospital, the medical hospital, that there is security. At certain times, you have to show your ID to get to certain floors. You have to go through certain protocol. Well, the church has to operate with the same spirit of excellence. They'll make sure that when a person shows up on your campus, they feel safe and secure. That the children are safe and secure, and that the women are safe and secure, and the people are safe and secure. So we got to just put things in place, but never operate on the spirit of fear, because we lose that battle if we do.
Yeah. And I certainly understand that, you know, and I also understand the element of fear when people do have the apprehension about going into church. But what you said certainly is true, and that is the word, you know, God does with the fear thing, you know.
Yes.
And we need to all operate in that. And it's funny because our subconscious mind works a little differently sometimes, and we have to battle that subconscious mind. That even though we know that, we're still kind of operating in that subconscious mind. So we have to battle against that and fight against that.
You know, there was a road rage incident in Houston, Highway 45, a few months ago.
The lady.
Yes, but guess what? No one woke up that next morning and said, I'm not going to drive on 45.
Mm-hmm.
There has been robberies at several of the local eating establishments.
Mm-hmm.
But no one wakes up and say, it's not safe to go to McDonald's anymore. It's not safe to go to IHOP because they've been robbed. Banks get robbed frequently now.
Mm-hmm.
But no one says, I'm not going to the bank because the bank may get robbed.
Right.
Don't pick and choose where you're going to be afraid at.
Yeah.
Don't. The devil is strategic. On Sunday morning, that's the only time colored folks check the weather forecast. If it's raining, I'm going to roll over. But on Monday morning, no one wakes up to see if it's going to be sunshine and rain to go punch the clock.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not devalue our spirit man. Let's put focus and attention on our spirit man.
I think that's great.
I love your audience.
Me too. They are all good people. They are all wonderful people. I was truly blessed that they are present. Now, we had another question, I think, was it a statement?
It's just a question. Wondering, was the senator a target for this killing because of the things that he has done for the country, for the city that he was in?
That's a very relevant question, and I think a lot of other people have the same question actually, because he had gotten certain laws passed, this, that, and the other.
Yeah,
so it became a question: was he actually targeted at that time? And I think the consensus was that
he was working on cameras for police officers. That's
The
one of
body
his
cams.
main.
right the body cams.
Right. So
for the police officer.
that was the thing specifically that they said.
Mhm.
Because he was working for that to happen.
Right.
So that was why the whole thing about him being targeted
Came into play.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, again, that's hysterical. We tend to kind of stretch things sometimes. He was targeted not because of his civil duties. And let me say this, he was a great man.
Mm-hmm.
He was very involved and active in his community, making sure justice was served as a state senator and as a pastor. But I believe this young man, it wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah.
He's
It
just
wouldn't have
on that
mattered
mission, huh?
if he would have been a plumber. It wouldn't have mattered if he would have been a mechanic. That young man's mind was made up that day that all the hate that had been infested in him and groomed in him. Today, I'm going to do something good for America. I'm going to go and kill some black people. It wouldn't have mattered who they were.
Right.
His mind was made up that to do my patriotic duty to go and kill some black people. Because his statements after being arrested proved that, you know, and even the statement he gave to the witness, go and tell them why I'm doing this. He never mentioned anything about civil movements or civil. He said, I'm doing this because America needs to rid itself of black people. Y'all are no good. That was his statement. That was his statement.
Exactly.
That we are no good. And someone told him that we are no good. Someone breathed that in this young man's spirit, that we as African American people are no good. We have no value. So it's easy for him to go and do what he did. Can you imagine? He sat in there a whole hour.
That's just, it's hard to even fathom.
I would have seen if he just walked in and started shooting, but he sat and engaged for a whole hour, and he still was able
To do
to
that.
pull the trigger.
Yeah.
That means in his heart,
Yeah.
he really felt conviction that this was the right thing to do.
Yeah, and you would have thought that he wouldn't have felt conviction, but compassion, having sat there for that amount of time. And not only that, but when you sit with someone for a period of time, there's a certain level of intimacy that develops. And just because it's human nature, you know, and so you don't think in terms of, okay, I'm going to harm this person in 5 minutes or an hour. So for this guy to sit in that congregation and to sit around, and I'm sure those people were loving Christian people that welcomed him in spite of it being a meeting that was specifically for the leaders of the church. They probably saw him as a young man that needed something, and so they couldn't turn him away, because that's the kind of people that we are. But for him to have that type of heart to where you can sit with these people for this amount of time, and I'm sure they were discussing the Word of God because they were at church and it was a leadership, you know what I'm saying? But for him to sit there during that time and then to kill those people, just massacre those people, I was in total shock when I saw it. I was just in total shock.
Hatred and cold-heartedness is so heavy that in America, understand something. There was a time in America where I was using an African-American woman. She could breastfeed little Johnny, teach little Johnny how to read and write, bathe little Johnny, cook food for little Johnny, and little Johnny would love her. And one day grow up and lynch her.
That's right. That's right.
The same woman that breastfed me,
Mm-hmm.
I can kick around, abuse, and if she does not submit to my authority, call all my friends to the town square and have a public hanging. And have you ever seen a movie where a lynching takes place? It's not quick.
Mm-hmm.
They have to position you, put the noose around your neck, make sure it's the appropriate. You tie your tie, you gotta make sure it's right.
Mm-hmm.
They gotta make sure it's right.
Like yours.
Well, you know. And then put the force.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long process.
Right.
And you would think somewhere in someone's heart, they would say, no, this is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yet they stand there and applaud. They stand there and tell the other black people, if you're not a good boy, this could happen to you too.
Right.
So this little boy, with his 21-year-old young man, had been fed this type of language, this type of hatred, this type of bitterness toward black people, that he was doing nothing but living out what was in his heart. So as a man thinketh, so is he. He was living out his thoughts. And to this day, he still believes that what he did was right.
That's right.
He doesn't understand why y'all punishing me. I'm trying to help America become good old America again. And remember it, a statement was made, this was only a preview of coming attractions.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. You know, there are certain times when I'm just like speechless, and this is kind of like one of those times. And for a statement to even be made like that, you know, this was like a preview. You know, like stick around. Like, in other words, it's going to get a whole lot worse. Let me ask you real quick. We're out of time almost. That statement was made by
A politician in South Carolina.
a politician in South Carolina.
Not a quote unquote redneck on the street corner, but an elected politician who was free enough to make that statement. Can you imagine? If people that we elect in office
Yeah.
can have that type of freedom, can you imagine what's being said behind closed doors?
I can only imagine. You know, this dialogue, like I said before, has been a wonderful dialogue, and I think it's this type of dialogue that can actually help make a difference and actually heal America when people get to see it. So I certainly thank you for coming on the show today. You're
Thank you
always
for having me.
an awesome guest. You've enlightened the audience in an amazing way, and I really appreciate it. Now, I want to let you guys know, for more information on the Farrell Phelps Show, you can certainly reach me at Let's Talk About It 12tv@gmail.com. That's Let's Talk About It 12tv@gmail.com. You can also go to my YouTube channel. Simply go to YouTube, type in the name Farrell Phelps. All of my shows will be right there. Until next time, folks, we'll see you then.